Hi everyone, and welcome to the Generalist, where security practitioners look beyond niches, silos, egos, and hopefully build their competence and credibility. My name is Ilya Omansky. So, first things first. After long 3 years of suffering through the travel challenges of the pandemic, I'm finally going to be on the road. First stop is going to be London, and I'll be there from the 7th of September to the 21st of September. So if you're listening to this, you're based in the UK, please reach out to me. Let me know if you'd like to meet. I'm always glad to meet new people or the contacts that I already have. Who might be available. So it's going to be great, and look forward to making these connections. Then from 23rd of September to October 30th, I'll be in the States, and obviously it's a big market to cover. I'll be doing a lot of business development there, and I'll be traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast. Obviously, the first stop will be New York, where my family and friends live, and I'll be saying hello there. But aside from the East Coast and New York specifically, I'll be traveling to a few places from the West to the East, as I said. So also, if you have interest in what I do, what I've been saying publicly, in my messages and my articles and these podcasts, please let me know, and I'll be happy to find a way to meet up. And now to something that I received quite a few messages about. This was a recent post on LinkedIn, and where I decided to share with everyone that a framework that I've been sharing with clients. Matter of fact, I use it as a bit of a test for clients when I do assessments of their security measures and programs. And there are very simple three categories. First is people, second is assets, and third is processes. And the framework, I can put a link under this video, has some subcategories which discuss, kind of drill in a little bit more into each of the main categories. What is relevant to, let's say, the category of people, and things like culture, design, psychology come to mind, right? Then under assets, right, we talk about classification, or if I guess I have a lot of conversations with clients who don't even know what their assets are, but I'll touch on that in a minute. And so there are a few subcategories there. And then under processes, of course, it's nice to say that you have a process, but if you really can't have an agreement on what the actual process is, or don't have it validated and carefully described, then it's not really, it's a process to someone in one form, and somebody else treats it as a different process and different set of steps. So I talk about processes quite a bit with clients because obviously anything that helps protect assets necessitates development of processes and maintenance of those processes, and then constant reassessment of those processes, whether they work or not. So People are the decision makers. Everything that happens in protection of assets starts and ends with human beings. So when we talk about innovation and technology, or when we talk about convergence, right? Those are important terms, right? And there's a lot of discussion about those, right? But first and foremost, security programs or security controls don't really work if humans don't agree, if humans don't make their decisions around those protection measures, and their decisions are congruent with the protection strategy. So people play a very significant role in, I would say primary role in development and implementation of protection programs. The next one, which is, I think, probably the most troublesome, is the category of assets. And I've been saying this over and over, and I speak with all my friends, industry colleagues, with partners, and obviously with clients, about the necessity of defining, prioritizing, classifying assets, and then developing potential loss scenarios, and then the outcomes that could affect those assets, right? And then you can do that both qualitatively and quantitatively, albeit my quantitative approach is not based on 1, 2, 3s or some sort of statistical analysis. I like to use dollars and cents because that's the best way to describe the situation with the loss of an asset or the potential scenario of the loss to senior executives, to the decision makers. And I've been asking about asset protection or assets in general, pretty much with every assessment I remember having done. And I've done those assessments across the United States. I've done them in Europe. I've completed multiple assessments in Asia. And the list of countries is going to be quite long. And I've also completed a few in the early days when I worked in Mexico and Argentina and Brazil. So, interestingly, most clients, when you address the question of what are your mission critical assets, to this day, don't understand what they are. They can't give me a cohesive story or a quick, snappy answer, if you will, about what their mission critical assets are. Now, if you start prodding a bit, of course they'll say, "Oh yeah, man, so commonsensical. We know what these assets really are," but nobody has this consistent awareness of what they are, and the thinking is not, or decision making is not conducted around mission critical assets, and therefore security decisions are not conducted and not made around mission critical assets, which is a problem, wouldn't you think? So, assets, in my view, as much as this word is quite often used in multiple frameworks and in both camps in our industry, the cyber and the physical, use the word assets. This word started appearing in more and more industry standards and publications, from FEMA to NIST. And yet, it seems like the literature, the reports, the standards, while using the word, aren't carefully translated into reality of operations. And if it's not carefully translated, where do we stand? Some of the largest organizations in the world don't understand what their mission critical assets are, or at least don't have the thinking around and the development of their protection programs around mission critical assets. And I'm not the one who came up with the phrase, if you don't know what you're protecting, you can't protect anything. I didn't come up with it. Okay, I first heard it years and years back, probably from the likes of Ira Winkler and the likes of people in the cyber camp, primarily. But I also heard it from my mentor, Paul DeMatteis. Okay, to him, it was crystal clear that if you don't take the time to have the conversation with functional leadership, not the security people, but functional leaders, okay, If you don't have that conversation with them, and if you haven't really articulated and discussed and agreed on what the mission critical assets are, neither the security program or the security function nor the functional department can move in the right direction of understanding what's mission critical and developing protection methods and protection solutions for those mission critical assets, and also making this a consistent effort. Okay, consistent both for those responsible for protection and also those that are responsible for running the business, the business function. So to this day, it boggles my mind that we are all in our industry agreeing, it seems to me, with the concept that assets, and mission critical assets in particular, play a significant role or a very key role in designing security measures. And yet, time and time again, when I ask a question, what are your mission critical assets? The answer is terrible. Okay? In fact, there is no answer because there is a puzzled look. And this is the moment when you realize that you're sitting in front of a client that has never had that question posed to them and has never had a conversation about mission critical assets. Yet, if they lose one, right, and everybody talks about resilience, right, if they lose it, that disproves or very much hurts the organization operationally, financially, reputationally. It disproves their claim that they're a resilient organization. So in my view, mission critical assets or conversations and agreement about mission critical assets is probably the foundation of where you would begin to develop protection programs and protection solutions. Last but not least, you know how we all in our industry are talking about policies and procedures. What do policies and procedures at the end of the day accomplish, right? They document the processes that we have and the agreements around those processes, like how we're going to do this, right? And they also help train new cadre, existing cadre on a recurring basis on how we want those processes to be completed. How do we want them to be run? And between the writing and reassessment of policies and procedures and also consistent training, if it's frequent enough, not annual. As you know, I've been telling everybody that annual training is really not the way to go. I'm sorry if you're hearing it for the first time, but annual training doesn't work. Even semi-annual training doesn't work. Okay, training must be frequent and must be engaging so that the retention of information and then therefore implementation of what learning material you're receiving, right, is real. Otherwise, if you do it as a tick box semi-annually or annually, it doesn't resonate. Okay, the retention is minimal, if that, right? So through reassessment, development and reassessment of policies and procedures as they help document the processes, the training that happens, right? You'd think we would get consistent feedback on how to improve processes, because at that moment we realized maybe we made a mistake in the process and maybe there's a vulnerability, or our processes work well here, but they don't work well in some other area. Let's align, make sure that we are balanced, right? And that all of our processes are optimal. I had a case not so long ago in Argentina, right, where a person who's responsible for outbound transactions from the organization was conned It was like a CEO scam, right? So she was conned into wiring several million USD to outside parties that she thought was all legit, because she thought that she was doing this at the request of the CEO. But the trouble wasn't the fact that, yeah, they got conned. It's a common issue, and you could definitely look at the organization and ask, well, do they really understand what they're doing in terms of protection of assets? And has somebody validated their processing? And here's where the issue lies is, of course, they're not a mature organization. And of course, they don't understand how protection of assets needs to work, right? Because nobody understands in their organization what mission critical assets are, right? But dollars and cents were their mission critical assets. They were a few $1 million poorer, right? After having wired the money to fraudsters. This person who was responsible for those transactions did not have a single validating measure, like the checks and balances, to help make sure that another set of eyes, at least a second set of eyes, if not the third and fourth, right, has validated the transaction requests, right? So she was the sole person who received the request to wire, and she was the sole person who facilitated the entire transaction, end to end. One person, one human. Good process? Bad process? Right? Doesn't take a rocket scientist. And I always say this to peers of mine and to students, right? Security is not a rocket science. It's very logical approach, right? It does have a lot of intricacies, right? Corporate culture, you got to work with that. You got to work with egos of senior leadership, with their overconfidence. There's a lot of psychology behind the scenes, and it is quite complicated to actually make sure that security works. But if you take an auditor, or if you take, like the most junior person from the Big Four, and you just explain this to them, they're going to be scratching their head and saying, how the hell did this happen? How did this person end up in the position where she could do the entire transaction, having received just a simple email from the CEO, which she didn't even validate? She didn't know that there was a typo in the CEO's email address. She didn't pay attention to that. Okay? How could she possibly have completed the wire without the bank stopping her, without internal controls stopping her? Right? Validating, hey, who's the money going to? Is this real? Let's double check here, second set of eyes, right? So that's the process for you. And we have, for example, at a trivial level, right? We have security tours around facilities, okay? Conducted by sleepy security officers. You think that tour is going to produce good results? Do you think that they're being vigilant, or are they just ticking boxes? What prompts security officers to do a good, vigilant security tour of the facility? Okay? Or complacency sets in. What is more real today? Process is in place, probably documented, but it's executed so poorly that you actually don't know where you're vulnerable, right? So when I walk around facilities, and I tug on door handles, and I try to, everybody tells me, Ilya, the door is locked. I'm like, I got you, but I have to check, right? And guess what? Not every door is locked. Not everyone that they claim to be, right? So, we design a lot of stuff in complex organizations that we believe works. But if we don't validate the process, or each process, I should say, that we rely upon for protection of assets, unfortunately, it's not going to be, it's not going to look good when an incident occurs and somebody launches a legal claim. I've observed this in a conversation with another client, a big telecom, where one of the big four has written InfoSec playbooks or incident management playbooks for them. And 1 minute into a conversation with the person who was responsible for InfoSec within the organization, we realize that the playbooks have been written and they exist, but they're not being used. Now, mind you, we reviewed those playbooks and they were atrocious. Atrocious. Okay? The money that the organization paid to have those playbooks done, I can't even tell you how much that was. Okay? It was a very significant amount. All right? It's painful to know that somebody charged for such a poor product. However, okay, so you have the playbooks. And somebody comes to review, okay, you're supposed to have this in place, right? These are the ones that you're supposed to be using. A minute into a conversation, we find out that actually, no, they don't use this stuff at all. In fact, the organization is so poorly prepared to deal with incidents. It's not even on their radar, to be honest with you. Like they were in a state where InfoSec was a very new game to them. And mind you, they already had a couple of breaches. Okay? So, again, going back to the necessity of process design, process validation. And that's why these three pillars are probably the most fundamental in how we discuss protection of assets, how we think about delivering optimal value to our clients, to those who trust us to protect what's valuable to the organization. And those things are not just the tangibles, right? There's also a reputational component, right? So that organization, the telecom, they did suffer the two breaches, as I said, and there was a significant reputational fallout, right? In fact, they never quantified it, never monitored it as well as they should have, because the retention of customers was directly related to those two breaches. And you could see that in the course of 2 years, they finally acquiesced to that actually they started losing customers. So, to sum up, what I find very interesting is that it's super cool to observe the industry. Super cool. Like I look at how in-house teams work. So I have some visibility into that. People talk about SOC. People talk about how they're accomplishing these great things. But who's lifting the rug? And who's lifting the rug in these three categories? People, assets, and processes. If I arrive in your organization, somebody else arrives, okay? You don't have to hire me, okay? Somebody else arrives and asks you some questions around these three subject areas. What answers do you have? Are those answers going to be meaningful and comprehensive? Or there's going to be a pause, and you're going to have to collect your thoughts to explain. The moment you start the pause, and then if you have to collect your thoughts, you're dead in the water. Because if you're not prepared to answer those questions, your program requires significant improvement. I'm not saying complete redesign, but improvement. And I'm being polite. So those are my thoughts. I'll link the post where I offered the framework for you later on. Again, very happy to share with you that I'm traveling, and I'll be in London from the 7th to 21st of September, and then in the US from 23rd to the 30th of 23rd September to 30th of October. Thank you. Thank you for your audience, for your patience, for your attention, and for sharing your thoughts as I kind of offer this content to you. if you have any ideas how to elaborate on some things I say, or challenge me on anything, please, by all means, just share. And I wish you all to stay safe. And for those of you who find the moment to connect with me and perhaps meet, look forward to it. Be well.